Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Lalitha Venkataramanan, and I have the honor of moderating this afternoon's panel discussion at the SIAM. I don't know where you are calling from, which country you're calling from. We are very happy to have you today. We have four esteemed panelists. I'm going to introduce the panelists and then ask them to say a word or two, and then we'll take up many questions. Please post your questions on the Q&A on your Zoom call, and we'll take it up one at a time. So let me start with the introductions. Patrick Bangert. Patrick heads the AI engineering and AI sciences team at Samsung SDS America. He's responsible for Brightix AI Accelerator, which is a cluster computing product that's included in the Brightix AI platform. Among his other responsibilities is to act as a visionary for the future of AI at Samsung. Before joining Samsung, Patrick spent 15 years as CEO at Algorithmica Technologies, a machine learning software company serving the chemical and oil and gas industries. Prior to that, he was assistant professor of applied math at Jacobs University in Germany, as well as a researcher at Los Alamos and NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. Patrick obtained his machine learning PhD in math and his master's in theoretical physics from University College in London. Patrick is a German native. He grew up in Malaysia, Philippines. He later lived in the UK, Austria, Nepal, and US. He's done business in many countries and believes that AI must serve humanity beyond merely automation of routine tasks. An avid reader of books, Patrick lives in the San Francisco area with his wife and 2 children. Welcome, Patrick.
Hi.
Do you want to add to anything I've said so far?
I've written too much, I'm afraid, already. So, hi, everybody. These days I represent Samsung, so I hope to give the corporate software point of view on this panel.
Fantastic.
I look forward to talking to all of you.
Next up is Frédéric Gardi. Frédéric, you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody.
Frédéric conducts OR, Operation Research Projects, for over 20 years in various areas, from banking to industry. And having started as an optimization engineer in a small software business, he moved to the OR department at Breed, one of the biggest French corporations. There he launched the development of Local Solver, which is an internal tool to fill the gaps in traditional mixed number linear programming solvers. Feeling the need for such a tool at a global scale, he co-founded in 2012 a company, Local Solver, as a spin-off, with the aim of offering a new generation optimization solver with emphasis on the ease of use, speed, and scalability. So as a background, Frédéric holds a PhD in computer science and habilitation from Sorbonne University. He has won several OR competitions, and there's a whole list of them that I'm not going to read. He has served as the president of the French Operation Research Society from 2014 to 2015. Welcome, Frédéric.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Our third panelist is Dr. Hector Klie. Hector?
Hi.
He's an experienced computational and data scientist focused on developing physics-informed AI solutions for multiple engineering and geoscience applications in oil and gas. Dr. Klie is a co-founder and CEO of DeepCast.ai since June 2017. He's currently appointed as an adjunct professor at the Department of Computational and Applied Math at Rice University. Prior to his role at DeepCast.ai, he was the Director of Enterprise Data Solutions and the Data Science Technical Lead at Sanchez Oil and Gas Corporation. He was the Associate Director and Senior Research Associate at the Center for Subsurface Modeling at the University of Texas in Austin and research scientist at PDVSA Interweb. He's published over 80 papers in the area of sparse linear solvers, production forecasting, field optimization, uncertainty quantification, high-performance computing, and machine learning. He holds 5 patent applications, inventions in the area of data analytics, for automated drilling and parallel physics-based solvers. He's chaired and co-organized several technical events at SPE, SIAM, SEG, IEEE. These are basically my stomping grounds as well. He's currently an associate editor for the Computational Geosciences Journal. Dr. Klie completed his PhD in computational science and engineering at Rice University in '97 and a master's degree in computer science in Venezuela in '91. Welcome, Hector.
Thank you, Lalitha, and thank you everyone for coming to the session. I hope you enjoy it.
And we are happy to welcome Professor Jeffrey Hoffstein. He's a professor of math at Brown University and an ISIAM associate director. He received his PhD in math from MIT in 1978. After holding postdoc positions at the Institute of Advanced Study, the Cambridge University, and Brown, Hoffstein was an assistant and associate professor at the University of Rochester. He came to Brown as a full professor in 1989. His research interests are number theory, automorphic forms, and cryptography. Hoffstein has written over 70 papers in these fields, co-authored an undergraduate textbook in cryptography, and jointly holds 12 patents for his cryptography inventions. In 1996, with Jill Pfeiffer and Joe Silverman, he invented the NTRU public key crypto system and founded a company, NTRU Cryptosystems. This company merged with Security Innovation in 2009 and then was spun out again as Onboard Security in 2018 and then acquired by Qualcomm in 2019. He is now in the middle of starting a new company. Hi, Jeff.
Hi. Hey, thanks. So I was told I was supposed to give about a minute and a half elevator pitch on roughly what I did. So I'll say a little bit more than the other people did. I feel a little odd that I seem to be the only pure, relatively pure mathematician here. But here's the story. I got interested in public key cryptography in 1994. Mostly because I wanted some money. I felt there was so much math out there, it was ridiculous that the only public key cryptography that existed was based on elementary number theory, like RSA and Diffie-Hellman and some elliptic curve variants on Diffie-Hellman. So I spent a year and a half obsessing over this, and eventually in November 1995, I thought of NTRU, which stands for Number Theorists Are Us, which was based on some ideas in algebraic number theory. And even though it could actually be just expressed in terms of polynomials and modular arithmetic. So I got together with Joe Pfeiffer and Joe Silverman, we refined it, and we started a company. And we raised a lot of money, like around $32 million in the middle of the tech bubble. Then the tech bubble burst and all the investors pulled out in roughly 2003. And I got down on my knees and begged them to let us keep $1 million. So we kept $1 million. We built the company very slowly, had a bunch of near-death experiences, which I could tell any budding entrepreneurs about. And when the financial crisis of 2008 came, we almost died again. Merged with another company in 2009. Stayed with them for another 9 years till 2018, when I managed to spin off our original company into a new company called Onboard Security, which was then bought by Qualcomm in 2019. And now I'm doing the stupid thing all over again. So that's my story.
Thank you, Jeff. So might I take a moment to tell all our all of the attendees, if you have any questions, use the question and answer tool at the bottom of the screen to submit them. If you hover, you put your mouse next to it, it'll come up, it will pop up, and then you can put in your question. So maybe I'll start off with one questions for all the panelists. So we probably have a lot of undergraduate and graduate students listening to you today. What advice might you want to give the math and applied math students, as well as the faculty members? What courses would you advise that they take in undergrad and grad school?
Let me take that one. I guess many people are wondering opportunities, especially in the areas of latest technologies like AI, machine learning, IoT, NLP, robotics, and so on. So my suggestion there would be your courses, machine learning. There are many offerings in the university, so free. There are many resources that you can access. Handle and manage, or we'll say master, a programming language, preferably perhaps Python. Another languages would be also Plus. Try to understand applications. I mean, try to work in a particular application that you feel inclined to. Develop some machine learning algorithms for that. Try to also get your hands dirty with data. Learn how to massage and wrangle data. That will give a lot of insights how to proceed with the modeling part. And so, as a mathematician, you have the advantage that you can understand a lot of the principles behind the modeling and behind how to basically develop processes for cleaning data and actually how to automate. I am a applied mathematician. One of the things that came to me, working especially in the area of linear solvers and simulations, is that many processes are happen repetitively. Iterations brings that into your mind. So when you're thinking about an iteration of something, you start thinking if there's something I could leverage on from previous iterations or previous calculations. So if you're in that arena that you have to solve processes iteratively, start thinking how I could do this much better, how I can avoid the redoing and overdoing of what I'm doing. So that will be my suggestion as a kind of provoking, motivating people that wants to get something new in that arena.
Right. Well, there's certainly many more machine learning and online courses people can take today than they could take even 5 years ago. Anybody else wants to jump in?
Well, yeah, let me say a few words.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I agree with everything Hector said. And on top of that, when I was an undergraduate and graduate student, there was a subliminal message that was taught in every lecture course I ever attended. And that message was, you must become a research professor. Everything else is substandard. And I bought into that program. I did become a research professor. And at that point, finally, far too late in my life, did I figure out what I had actually signed up for. So my professors told me, oh, you know, when you reach this stage, you have complete academic freedom, you can do what you like and so on. Yeah, you cannot, because your job number one as a research professor is to attract third-party funding. Job number two is administrative duties, because they fired all the secretaries in the past couple of decades. Then you've got to teach and grade students' homework. Sorry, you guys, it is a job to do. And so the amount of time that's available for research is quite small. And you are not free, because publish or perish will, put the clamps on you even for that. So put that into perspective is part of my advice. Becoming a research professor is not the only career out there. It's not the only worthwhile career out there. Even beyond that, I would say, given that this is an entrepreneurship panel, as a society, we teach everybody you have to get an education and then you have to get a job. Not necessarily. You can create your own job by being an entrepreneur. And I think everybody on this panel today has done that. And so just reframe your mindset. It is possible for you, finishing your graduate school, to start your own company, do something entirely new, take your mathematics to the field, solve some problem that nobody else has solved, or solve it better than people before you, and create a company of your own. And that is a possibility. Sorry, Jeffrey.
That's okay.
Very nice answer. Thank you, Patrick. Jeff?
Well, I would agree with a large percentage of what you said. Far too many students out there, undergraduates and graduate students, are indeed told you must be a researcher or else you're just, you're just nothing. And that is completely untrue. And that's something, and these days at Brown, I come from Brown, we're trying particularly hard to pound into our graduate students that there's many alternatives. And these are pure math graduate students, not applied math graduate students. We're trying to pound into their heads that there are many alternatives to being a research. On the other hand, I wouldn't think quite as negatively about research as you expressed it. I actually think it's quite a lot of fun being a research professor. And I would say on the contrary, that you have an incredible amount of free time, spare time to think about whatever the heck that you want to think about it. And most important, if you have, it depends on the type of personality you have. If you're a research scientist, you don't have a boss. It's very irritating having a boss. It's the cause of most of the stress in this life.
Good point, Jeffrey. Good point.
Thank you, Jeff.
I've thought about that quite often. But anyway, the real point I was going to say before Patrick spoke was I was going to suggest learn as much math as you can, both pure math and applied math. There is masses of applied math going on out there these days that's based on what 10 years ago was just totally pure math that nobody ever thought there would be an application for. And
So,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jeff. Go on.
That's okay. And for example, the company that I started is based on completely and totally pure math that comes from the 19th century that didn't have an application until I found an application for it. So the more math you knew, the more problems you'll be able to solve. The more you'll be able to solve, I think.
Hector, you were about to say something?
Oh, yes, I wanted to say about not having a boss. I think the opportunity, I mean, being an entrepreneur gives you the opportunity to be a better boss yourself, because you have to do so many processes. Then you understand basically, okay, what it means to an employee to be in a company, much better than when you are just in a corporation and you understand all the processes that are running behind you. So when you understand all that, you start valuing the value of your employees, really.
So as CEOs and CTOs, right, you are the leaders of your companies, or you are in the leadership team. How important is it for, when you look at resumes, is it to have internship experience? Would you consider a resume that is right after graduate school or postdoc with no internship experience?
Maybe I'll take this question. So we hire a lot at Samsung. Of course, we have a large team of people. Experience is important. And a little experience is a great deal more than none. So in case you are a fresh graduate, having a 2-month, 3-month internship somewhere is valuable over not having it at all. Once you do have some 1, 2, 3 years of work experience somewhere, the value of that internship goes away. So yes, for fresh graduates, I would say it's very good if you spend a summer or two getting an internship. I did back when I was an undergraduate student. I worked every summer, not just for career reasons. I had no money. I had to. That's the other side of the coin. You get paid being an intern, so watch out. But it is important to gain that experience because what you learn at university is extremely important. Gives you a lot of the background, but the one thing it doesn't teach you is how to apply it in a commercial setting. Having a boss, as Jeffrey said, it's a very important relationship to subsume yourself in a hierarchy. You will also have colleagues that you'll have to talk with. As a mathematician, it might be particularly tough to communicate what it is that you are doing to people who have no idea about mathematics and who just care about the commercial result. All that you will do during your internship, and that's why it's valuable.
Very good. Anybody else want to comment? There is a question on the question and answers board. Let me read it out. It says, I would like to ask the panel how they successfully penetrated their respective markets. In particular, how did you convince the target industries that they were better outsourcing to your company as opposed to relying on internal expertise. I think, Frédéric, for example, you started off in a bigger company, right? And then you decided to start Local Solver. So perhaps you can comment on that.
Yes. Yes, about the penetration, more about the outsourcing, the question about how to convince that it's better to give you the job or the contract comparison to how to make it internally. It's not so difficult today because in many companies and in many large companies, a lot of people understand that they cannot be they cannot develop internally a niche expertise on for example, I'm in optimization, mathematical optimization. Having some resources internally working in a mathematical optimization, it's difficult for a company, even a large company, to nurture, to develop internal expertise in some niche, in high-level scientific fields. And so many companies are okay to outsource if they feel that they can find a good partner, a long-term partner, which is skilled, which is really top in its field, because it's not so simple to build and to develop expertise internally, in fact, and in science, and especially in mathematics or related fields. I think it's clear what I try to.
Yeah. Hector, I think you did the same thing, didn't you?
Yeah, I have found different, perspectives depending on what type of company to talk to. The bigger the company, I will say, the more difficult is actually to sell what you're offering, because they have their own team and they believe that their team can do what you're doing. They can replicate it. Actually, the experience when you go to talk to these companies is that it's also tricky, because you try to sell some technology, what you're doing, and basically they're trying to see what they can copy or grasp or get inspired from what you're doing so they can do it themselves. When you go to a smaller company, the experience is totally different. They feel more interested in solving the problem. They don't have the team that can basically provide that solution, and they are more open to basically to embrace what you're offering. So I have found this situation, and and you can see there are more opportunities in smaller companies in general. But when you hit a good opportunity in a big company, of course, it's a good project.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Just to add a few words about that. We just try to target companies and large corporations where they don't have internal expertise, because if there is an internal expertise, if the internal expertise is strong, clearly it's really difficult to convince. Mm-hmm. And the key point is to find companies, businesses where they don't have a strong internal expertise, and you can find that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Frédéric and Hector. Another question on the Q&A is, when building your company, did you build it with non-technical co-founders? And if so, how did you find and choose these co-founders?
I can mention my case. Actually, I would say it was a kind of chosen rather than I chose, in the sense that my co-founder is my son. My son worked in Microsoft, so he has entrepreneurship in his head already. And I have been working all my life for companies, in the university or in the industry. And he's the one that basically motivated me to basically embark in this initiative of having a own company. And so he looked for me because, okay, the old dog that knows the industry, that have done a lot of research, and he's basically the one that has the energy, much for myself. But of course, I'm the CEO, given my experience, my connections, and in charge of conducting the research that we have to do, but he's in charge of executing that research in products. So it's a good combination, but in that case, it worked in that way. I was chosen. But
Yeah.
Our philosophy in our companies definitely is to look for highly technical people, highly qualified people.
Jeff, how about you? I think you mentioned 2 people in your elevator pitch.
Sorry, which two?
I think you mentioned Jill Pfeiffer and
Oh,
Joe
yes,
Silverman.
right. But they're both mathematicians as
I see.
well. But what I can say is that it's from experience, it is a total disaster to try to start a company with only technical founders. You cannot get venture capitalists to invest in you. They just don't take you seriously. You got to have some relatively slimy person in charge with business sense. Our first beginning was our first company started a bit unusually. In our case, to answer the previous question, the problem we invented this thing, and anyway, we got connected to Sony. Sony had a problem they wanted solved, and so this got us started with some seed money, even though a couple $1 million seed money, even though we weren't business types. But the first thing that Sony wanted was for us to hire a CEO and a market and salespeople, market stuff, that kind of thing, become a real company. And that was when things truly went downhill, because it turns out it is very, very hard for technical people and marketing people and CEOs that are non-technical to talk to each other and get things right. Yes, anyway, you desperately need non-technical people in order to start the company, but they can also lead to complete disasters because they have their own agenda, and I don't actually have any good advice on how to solve that problem, because I've only made mistakes there. I've never done anything right.
Patrick, maybe you can take the next one, which is how do you go about finding the leadership team, right? When you set up your company, how would you find a good CEO? Because it's particularly hard for mathematicians, the graduate students. They have no idea about finance and management. They've done very well in their courses. They've done perhaps very well in their PhD. But how would they go about finding a good leadership team to partner up with and start, even if they had a good idea?
Well, I think the first step is just to recognize what it is that you need. So like Jeffrey said, if you have a bunch of technical people on your team, they might find it difficult to communicate with the slimy CEO type they have to hire. Now, the first thing to realize is that you don't have a business until you have paying customers. Before that, all you've got is some math, maybe a computer program, but you don't have a business. So the really, really important thing is you have to somehow get a paying customer. That's the really important part. So you need a salesperson, and typically the title of the top salesperson is CEO, right? So don't misunderstand the CEO title as he is the greatest technocrat of the business. No. He's the chief sales guy.
That's right. Totally agree.
So the most valuable thing, if you yourself are considering to do this, is on top of your math classes, take a few English language classes, communication, be able to go out there, speak loudly, speak confidently, tell a joke. If you can do some of these things in public, you are on your way to communicating with non-technical audience, and then you yourself might be such a person. So ideally, I think, you want a person who has some technical capability as well as some of this extroverted, communicative ability at the same time. And you can judge what's the relative weighting of these two things, but such a person is absolutely crucial. You must get these people. As Jeff mentioned, the first things that VCs want is go hire a marketing team.
It sounds like you're saying the people you know and the leadership team is as important as the idea itself.
More.
More important. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually considerably more important than the idea itself.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
many people are out there with an idea. If you look at the success of businesses, you find that 9 out of 10 companies that do get VC funding go bankrupt within 2 years.
Yeah,
and maybe only 1 out of 10 companies that gets founded even gets VC funding. So you're talking about a success rate of about 1 or 2%. And why is that? Do all these people have really, really crappy products? No, they don't. They all solve the problem they were going out there to solve. 98 out of 100 people lack a good sales guy.
Fairly.
Frédéric, did you want to add something?
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. As scientific people, mathematicians, computer scientists, we clearly we clearly underestimate the needs to sell, to market, to communicate. As Patrick explained, it's really critical to launch a business. If you don't have that in your team, don't launch a company. And so the best, as Patrick explained, is to have someone with technical, a strong technical guy with this communication ability. It's really the best. For example, in our case at Local Solver, it was me that has taken this sales role, so sales and marketing, and so it was hard for me. It was hard for me at the beginning because I was not a salespeople. I didn't learn at school sales, marketing, and so I need to learn quickly to iterate. And but it's really critical. And by doing this job, I even more understand now how it is critical for launching a business. It's really, really critical to sell the product, the solution, services.
So in that context, we have a question here that says, what do you think universities can do to promote entrepreneurship for students to create companies? Do we, as in the universities, do the universities have to change the way they teach, perhaps make it more project-oriented? Because breeding successful entrepreneurs might bring in more donations as well in the future to the universities and not entirely rely on competitive research grants. So what do you think universities should do? Should they be teaching differently, different courses? I think Patrick said, take a few courses in, public speaking, go take courses outside of math and applied math. So that's self-initiative from them, the students. Can universities offer anything that will perhaps promote entrepreneurship?
I think the universities offer most or all of the necessary components. Students have to go out there and take them. These communication courses exist at every university I've seen. You just need to go out and book them. The one thing that one might add is, does your university facilitate meeting actually face-to-face entrepreneurs who might become mentors to you? So that's something universities with the Graduate School of Business do. That's why MBAs are so expensive, is because they give you access to a network of established professionals who can mentor you. People like us on the panel, if you want to reach out, please do. I think that's really the next step that universities can enable. And again, many, many universities, all the good ones I know, already do that, but you need to go and sign up.
Anybody else wants to weigh in?
I just want to comment that suppose you're a technical person, suppose you happen to be not particularly good at convincing people that your product is the most wonderful thing in the entire universe. In other words, the advice was given, search out marketing people, search out salespeople. But there you are, you're sitting there, you don't know any marketing people, you don't know any salespeople. You know, what the heck are you supposed to do if you're just starting out? And so what we found was the thing to do was is everything seems to work by links, person to person to person, and so if you search back among the people you know and ask the people that you know who they know, and ask them to ask the people they know, you could usually find a chain of 2 or 3 links that will lead you to somebody with expertise and experience in the position that you're interested. Of course, the more you're into it, the more you already know people, you know, like that. The craziest thing that I learned about business when I was first starting out, that absolutely everything is done, in my opinion, by personal trust and personal connections. Nobody does anything with somebody they don't already know and trust. And so you've just got to form a trust link with a couple of people until you get to where you want to go.
Oh, maybe it's the...
Lalitha, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted. Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry about that. We happen to be dog sitting, working from home like all of us. And this is the one day in 365 days that we are dog sitting, and the dog has chosen to bark. So I muted myself for a second there. So all of you have jumped companies, right? So Frédéric, you started Local Solver after working in a company. Hector, you did as well. You started your own company. Jeff and Patrick, you also, you know, were the CEO of algorithmic technologies, and then you gone to AI, head of AI engineering at Samsung. So can you comment on the intellectual property issues? You started off at one place, and then you moved on to a different place. Either you're starting your own company or part of a bigger company. How about the IP agreement?
Well, these days, back in the late 90s when we started, I was, you know, professor at a university, and I don't know how many other people that'll be true, but back in those days, universities had very archaic ideas about IP, which was roughly, we'll get the patents, we'll do nothing, you could do everything, and whatever you get, you could have 2% of it. And so back in the late 90s, just after we had the idea, we immediately made a deal with the research office that the IP was our own, that we had not used any Brown resources to make it. And back in those days, they did it. But basically the important thing is that if you happen to be a professor or even a grad student or you know, or a lecturer or something at some college or university, chances are they actually have a research office where they're much more enlightened these days. For example, Brown actually does a genuine partnership with their faculty. They've got well-established traditions. In fact, Jill Pfeiffer, my wife, who I worked with, is now the vice president of research at Brown. So she's filling the position of the person I got many years ago to sign off on, okay, Brown doesn't own this intellectual property. So anyway, my point was simply that IP is easy if you're these days, if you're at a good university. That they'll take care of taking care of the patent. They'll paying for the patent. They'll probably work out a fair deal, and they could also help you make the contacts that you need to find people. I'm not sure. I don't have advice for people not working inside the context of university environments.
Anybody wants to comment on?
Except don't give a talk. Don't give a talk on it until you have filed your provisional patent.
Good advice. Anybody else wants to take on, what if you're not working in a university? Did you have any IP issues when you moved from one company to another because you're still working in the same area?
Well, so typically an employment contract, no matter who you work for, has a clause that says if you invent anything, whatever it is that you invent belongs to whoever employed you. So that's true of my old company. It's true of my new company. And so whatever fantastic idea I had before belongs to my old company, and whatever idea I have now belongs to my new company. So there is no conflict in intellectual property in that sense. It's very clear who owns it, and in no case is it me. So one thing to understand legally is that companies are people in the eyes of the law. They can own things independently of real people. So there really is no problem.
Okay. I have a question here from Joel Nishimura. It's a question I have as well, which is, starting a company seems like it involves incredible personal financial risk. How do you mitigate that risk or recover from a failed venture?
Well, I guess you have to set up the expectations and how much you're willing to sacrifice. In our case, actually, when we start as a company, we start as a consulting company. And projects came actually quickly. And then we start saying, okay, is this the direction we should take? I mean, be just doing consulting? Or should we eventually do something by ourselves and start selling more products? And that was a decision that came after we got a certain momentum through consulting, in which we could separate some people to take care of the consulting and some other people take care of the software development. So that's the way we handle it. And about a year and a half, we decided to be more product oriented. But still, we have some people doing consulting, who is basically supporting the company. By the way, we haven't gotten any investments outside the company. So we have been running basically with our own funds and bootstrapping through consulting and supporting through that money the development. That's the way we have operated.
Thank you, Hector.
But it's tricky. It's really tricky because I mean, you never know. I mean, even in these times, as at the beginning, Lalitha, I mean, how do you handle this in this situation with the pandemic?
Yeah.
Well,
especially,
it's you have to keep the ball rolling. The consulting is still unfortunately is rolling, and as this is happening, you keep moving fast in the development part. But you never know. I mean, consulting may stop sometime, and you have to do something. I mean, you have to start selling licenses, something out of the software development. But at some point, that has to take over the consulting. That's the way we're seeing this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else wants to comment on this about financial risk and how to mitigate it?
Yeah, there isn't any way to mitigate it, as far as I know. We had two disastrous times. I remember the March of 2005, when we had $250,000 left in the bank, and the payroll bounced, which it shouldn't have because we had $250,000 in the bank. Except it turned out that our treasurer had stolen all the money.
Oh my!
And so that's a lesson for you guys out there. Don't trust people. Don't maintain a system of checks and balances. Very important. We couldn't even get the Massachusetts District Attorney to press charges because there's that fine line between stupidity and criminality. And so I and Jill and Joe had to, with our family, just dig up $250,000 somehow, which was rather tough for us at that point. And did we ever know we would get the $250,000 back? Well, we hoped we would. There were contracts in the pipeline, but they weren't there yet. But we did anyway, and luckily we won. Then another time when just 2 years ago, when I wanted to spin off this company from the place it had merged with, I actually had to borrow $1.5 million. And let me tell you, it does not feel good to borrow $1.5 million.
Mm.
But I had convinced myself that in the worst possible case, if you went to bankruptcy, you had to throw all the assets away, everything, I would at least with preferred stock and stuff, get my $1.5 million back. So that's one way of mitigating stuff. Make sure you get preferred stock, because if you do, that preferred stock is the first stuff that's paid back, as you know, when the crisis happens.
Right. Good point. So, Patrick, I think you had mentioned, IP is not an issue because when you have ideas with company A, well, then the IP belongs to company A. You move on to company B, and you have ideas, then it belongs to company B. So, Richard has a very nice question. He says, what if you get an idea on the weekend that is unrelated to your work at your current employer? Can you protect this idea somehow, or will your current employer own it?
Okay, so the key word is unrelated. If that is in fact true, and you can, if disputed, prove that it is unrelated, then that thing is yours, right? So if I'm employed as an AI guy, if I invent a new surfboard, nobody is going to contest that, and I can go make a surf company with that new board, okay? But if I invent a new AI idea, then I'm in conflict with my contract, and that idea, strictly speaking, belongs to my employer. So it comes down to that.
Okay.
Not so much where and when you have that idea, but is it indeed unrelated? That's the key.
Right. Okay. Any other questions from the audience? I don't see any more, so I can go with some of mine. What are some, maybe we can go around the panel on this one. What are some of your day-to-day challenges? Like, share your typical day with us. Just one random typical day. Not during the pandemic, of course, before the pandemic.
I would say the main challenge is how to set up the priorities, because nevertheless, we have resources are limited. We have some deadlines to meet, and how to set up the right priorities so you could achieve your goals and keep the thing going for better things. So that's a more difficult part when you run a company. How you orchestrate all these tasks so that you basically accomplish what is really required at the moment, and basically bootstrap on that and try to access better opportunities. So, but that's part of a strategy that has to go in your mind when you run a company. And that demands a lot of discussion, research, and be observer of what is going on. But as we mentioned before, I mean, the pandemic is kind of motivating you to think many different paths you may take. I mean, and try to respond adequately to the times. And so it's not, at this point, what we're thinking has nothing to do with what we were thinking actually before the pandemic in terms of business. So in order to keep going, we have to adapt to the times, we have to be alert, and we have to detect what are the needs out there. And that's difficult. I mean, you have to encompass a lot of things at the same time.
Yes. Frédéric, you were going to say, what are your typical day-to-day challenges? What's a typical day for you?
Well, I keep on working a lot of on sales aspects. So, to organize the sales process. It's a big part of my activities today. It's so today we are more in the question is more to how to scale. So we are at the level of sales, and we want to scale. So we want to scale to sell more in Europe, to sell more in the US, whereas we are in Europe, in Paris. I work a lot on that, to structure the sales process and to scale it. Without needing too much resources, financial resources to do that. And the second main point is to ensure every day that the R&D people, the R&D team is well aligned on the business needs, on the client needs, to avoid any degradation, to avoid losing time to work on things that don't matter for clients and for the market. It's important to check that the R&D is well aligned, remain aligned, and listen clients.
Very good. Anybody else wants to jump in? I actually have a question. Can you share with our audience some habits that you have developed, some healthy habits that you believe has enabled you to be successful in your career?
So I meditate. I start my day and I end my day every day with meditation. And I feel that that's not only important, it is more essential than food and water for me. So a large part of my job involves being creative, and being creative on a very short time scale. Oftentimes I might be, asked a technical question before lunch, and by that afternoon I have to have a design available, right? Because like 20 people are waiting for it. So I have to have a certain mind frame where I can be creative on command, and being kind of calm and stabilized and rooted mentally and emotionally is really, really important for that. So one thing that I can recommend to everyone, mathematician or no, is meditate. It's available in every religious tradition. I don't care what your beliefs are. It helps a lot to lead a happy life and to be able to perform well if anything you're doing is in the mind.
I totally second that. I do the same morning and night. Helps tremendously. 10 minutes, all it takes is really 10 minutes. Right. And the way I describe it to my kids is it's like etch a sketch. You know, you've been scribbling all these ideas, you know. Next morning you go and you press the reset button and you clear your mind and you start off from stage zero. It's amazing.
And speaking from the other side, I agree with you in principle, but I've tried over many years unsuccessfully to meditate and just have had no luck whatsoever.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. We can chat about this offline if you like.
Perhaps so. Yeah, I've discussed it. I've discussed it a lot with some colleagues who do, but haven't found the path yet.
So I want to say meditation doesn't necessarily mean sitting, squat on your couch. It can be a walking meditation. It can be a running meditation.
I particularly tried the walking meditation.
Okay. Any other healthy habits that one wants to comment on?
What helps me in my case is when I feel under pressure, stress, or when I feel that the stress is overwhelming, I change subject. I jump into something I like to do as a hobby. For example, I'm very into the Scrabble, for example. I play Scrabble. Oh, I start playing Scrabble. Or if it's something physical, well, I go and play squash. That's the thing I like to do also. Or watch a movie. I like to watch a lot of movies. So I try to alternate. When I feel over a lot of pressure, I find an activity that would basically pull me out totally from the work and think something different. And then come back. And usually when I come back, I feel like I get the answers much quicker. I can simplify processes. But when you're saturated, your mind is saturated of many things, you cannot basically operate efficiently. So you have to change context, and that helps a lot.
Yeah. And thank you, Hector. So we have a question here from Vincent, and maybe we can go around the panel on this one. This might be our last question because we are coming up on the hour. The question is, how do you determine when to transition from consultancy to corporation? What was the trigger event, if there was one? Perhaps we can go around the panel here. Something must have triggered you to move from one to the other. So what was that trigger?
In my experience, in my experience, companies often start with consultancy. You got your great idea, and except nobody wants to buy it because, well, I could also advise you, don't try selling security. Nobody wants to pay money for security, believe me. So if you can't succeed in selling security, what you could do is you could consult with people that want security or that want various other things. And the trouble is, consultancy doesn't buy you much as a company. It doesn't pull in it doesn't make your company very valuable, but it does keep you going. So what my company did was, when the investors walked away and they left us with $1 million, we did consulting. We ended up doing consulting on trusted software stacks of all things. The stuff that ties the trusted the TPM inside your laptop to the connection between the place where the hardware where all the encryption operations happen and the software that interacts and wants to do those hardware applications. So we ended up building that software stack and consulting with people that want to do it. We also ended up consulting on vehicle-to-vehicle transportation. So it earned us money, and it kept us going. That's what kept us alive until we were able to start actually selling other things. So I think the transition is when you want to start making more money.
I totally agree with what Jeffrey said. And on top of that, I would add, while you're being a consultant, you're learning what these customers really want, and you're learning what they want to see as the outcome, because not always is the outcome just a numerical answer, right? It needs to be presented with charts and graphs that look appropriate. You learn all of this during your role as a consultant, and then can you build the product that you can go back and sell to the people you consulted with beforehand and to others.
So we are up on the hour, and Tim Fest has left this meeting. So this is officially the end of this meeting. I want to take a moment and thank all the panelists, Hector, Patrick, Jeffrey, and Frédéric. Please join us in the breakout rooms. The link to the breakout rooms is given on the chat window with the meeting ID and the password. There are multiple ways to join this, either Zoom or Skype for Business. I'm also sharing my screen with you, so you can always copy and paste this as well. So we hope to see you there in a few minutes. And please keep in mind, when you enter the Zoom meeting in a few seconds, you will be in the foyer, where you will be automatically assigned to a breakout room. We will all be in a breakout room for about 20-25 minutes. Tim will give us the sign when the breakout room's closing, and then we are automatically reassigned to a different breakout room. So in addition to the 4 panelists, you will be meeting other industry speakers there as well, industry SIAM members as well. So feel free, it's a very open discussion. Feel free to engage with all of us and ask questions. Hope to see you there soon. Thank you for joining us.
Lalitha,
Goodbye, everybody.
Perhaps you could copy the link into the chat
I
so
did.
people could.
I did.
Into the chat.
Did I not put it in the chat?
It is in the chat.
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right. Okay.
Yes, it is to all panelists and attendees. I hope you can see that. Yeah.
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. So hope to see you all there, and thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you to the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you all.